And the route that Mickey had chosen was just more convoluted, I suppose, than we thought, and it just took longer, and I was getting stressed. And
I know the feeling. I-35 is never easy.
no.
And I've been in Austin for 17 years, and my family is all in North Texas as well, Denton area, Fort Worth, and it never seems to ever, the construction is ever going, right? It's ever,
Yeah, I've never seen it
it's a constant.
not under construction.
Never not under construction, and traffic, it seems to just build up and build up and build up. And, used to you could find some times like 9 a.m. to maybe 11 a.m. or something, and it's all
Well, I love this table.
Yeah.
Rustic.
Yeah, we were just commenting on this table. It's seen some interviews. Mm-hmm. They complain about it because it doesn't allow for 4 people to sit and easily be seen on the cameras. It impedes the view. So anyhow. Well,
anyway,
how are you ready? Do you need anything else? Snacks? Anything?
No, I don't think so. If we realised we were running so late, we wouldn't. We stopped at a Sonic at Hearn, I think it was, or
cherry limeade?
Some place like that. Eh?
Did you get a cherry limeade or?
Hey Ryan, would you mind putting the cups on the other side?
Yes.
Efren, do you want me to put mine in?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. You can still drink
start whenever
there.
you're ready.
Do you want us to? I can't put my elbows on the table, or can I?
However you're comfortable. And
it's pretty good.
Yeah, get comfortable. That's the main thing. You just got off the road. How long did it take? 4 hours? 3 and a half?
Oh God, we left at 10:20.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Mickey is the navigator.
Yeah.
She considers herself a crack navigator.
Careful now. Careful. She's in the studio with you.
I didn't say you weren't.
Yeah, well, we do. We turned out we did have plenty of time. Oh, we're fine.
But Mickey does like swooping in right on time.
Well, I do appreciate you being here.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Dr. Peter Snell, is that how you'd prefer to be?
Yeah, and I'm also knighted.
Yes, so Sir, how do I do that?
I don't know how it works. I don't use it.
Well, very good. And as a part of this,
No, don't say sir or anything.
Okay.
and even the doctor stuff. If we're dealing with athletes and coaches,
okay,
I don't know. Most of my experience with sports medicine doctors has not been good. They're so. What's the word? They think they know it all.
Gotcha.
They don't.
Yes, smartest man in the room.
Yeah, because most of them haven't had a practical background, and they're sort of would-be coaches, but they disparaging, insulting. Yeah, I've been insulted a lot, and so this is where my PhD comes in useful to give a bit of credibility.
Yes.
And of course, results help too.
Absolutely, always.
Probably. I mean, that's Lydiard always did that. I mean, how many champions have you trained when you got challenged by someone?
And speaking of results, I just want to key on some highlights. 3-time gold medalist at the Olympics,
Yes.
2 in the 800, 1 in the 1500, and as far as I've researched, the only man to successfully pull off the double since 1920. The 800, 1500 gold.
Yeah, since 1924.
24.
Albert Hill, yes.
Please correct me if I ever miss.
Of course, there was that drug taker who pulled it off at a world championship.
2005. And I didn't want to get into that, but yeah, that's true. Rashid Ramzi, right?
Yeah.
So, but he was since, I guess, popped.
Disgraced.
After 2008, yeah. Several world records to your name. 800, 880. Back then, we still had the 880, correct?
The New Zealand, I don't know, probably people don't run it anymore, do they? And Yeah, I also still holding the New Zealand record for 800.
And the K, right? The 1,000?
Oh, probably.
I think 216?
Yeah, 216 something. In spite of John Walker, Nick Willis, and a bunch of people who've tried.
Yes. I reached out to Nick Willis before this, and I said, do you have any questions for Peter? He's like, oh, Peter Snell's the man. You know, you got to...
Yeah, I still feel bad that I didn't call him after his silver.
Which one? He's got 2 now, right?
London.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I like Nick. He's good. I thought he was making a mistake when he went off to Michigan, because I've seen so many Americans ruined by over racing and
The collegiate system.
yeah, the collegiate system, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I've often, we'll get in there, you know, but you know, there's so many wasted efforts at, you know, at a conference championship or a regional championship when they could be focusing, that occurs in April or May.
Yeah. And as Lydiard would have said, we'll let them have those races. We'll save ourselves for the big ones, and that's was his philosophy.
Well, I'm gonna jump in right to it, and I will say, part of the foundation of this company, of Flow Sports, we had the unique opportunity to interact with your former coach Arthur Lydiard back in 2004, and at the time, my distance coach, Coach Lydiard, was coming through the Texas tour and involved in many speaking engagements at that time. And he said, hey, just come and stay with us. And we got the unique opportunity to have a one-on-one with him, the distance team at the University of Texas here. And
he loves an audience.
Yeah, yes. And he talked to all of us with so much confidence that we could one day, if we chose, we could be medalists. We could be global championship medalists. We could win medals.
If only you did what he said. Sorry, I better constrain myself.
No, not at all, not at all. But one of the things he did say is we started talking about training and different training philosophies, and his and the power of the long run. And I know that's certainly was part of your training paradigm with Coach Lydiard. But he also talked specifically about you in your ability to perform under pressure at major championships. And he said Peter Snell was as cold as ice. The higher the stakes.
Well, maybe.
And we all thought that. I mean, it must be something more than just the training. Maybe it's,
I don't know that I was as cold as ice, but I was able to just screen things out and just not sort of be overcome by the ambience of the situation. And then from the standpoint of the competitive problem, I always took the view that all I can do is perform the best I can. Hopefully that'll be good enough. If not, so be it.
So did you ever...
And so I wasn't sort of saying, oh, there's Elliot, there's so-and-so, there's so-and-so, and get all wrapped up. I need to be able to run my best on the day. I've trained hard, I should be able to do it. Just don't screw up. And I nearly did screw up a couple of times, and thanks to Tommy Farrell, I nearly probably didn't break my world record for the 800. In the Olympics.
Yes. I mean, and that was 64, correct?
Yeah, 64.
Yeah. But I guess how much of that confidence then was derived from your training going into major championships?
Oh, a lot. Yeah, a lot. And Lydiard helped a lot with that, saying, you've done the work, I remember at Rome, they had to add an extra round because of the larger than expected entry. And he said, "Oh, this is perfect for you. You're going to be improving with each race, and the others are going to be hanging on. And by the time the final comes around, you're going to have more in the tank than the others." and he nearly was only just right. Nearly wasn't. Yeah. So yeah, the better the base training, the more confidence that I had. If the base training didn't go so well, you know, I could run well, but not sustain it. That's a bit.
During your base training, it's been well documented that you were 100 miles per week.
Well, not exactly. That's the goal. The reality was probably a lot less than that. Now I did have, like before Tokyo was my best ever base, 1,012 miles in 10 weeks. And that was much better. Before Rome, it was probably about 70 a week. I mean, Lydiard talks about 100, but the reality of actually doing that was, I would miss days, I had injuries, didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
You name it.
The motivation.
And yeah, I think Bill Bailey didn't think I was that dedicated, but so it wasn't always. It was getting as much done as I was capable of at that time.
So Rome was your first Olympic appearance, and the build up to that, maybe the volume wasn't quite there in terms of your mileage on a weekly basis like it was for Tokyo. But I mean, training was still, for the most part, consistent with.
Yeah, I was. What I think is really significant is that my performance as a cross-country runner was improving greatly, and actually ended up winning a New Zealand cross-country title against distance runners.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the first time I ran cross-country in 1958, I just made the Auckland team and finished almost last in the nationals. And the next year later, I was fourth, same event. So this was the effect of the base training, and I assessed how I was doing by how well I was able to race on the road and in cross country.
Over the course, so there were almost key performance indicators.
Yeah.
And you were.
Although the trouble with the road racing, I was so excited by that I was able to do this, beat distance runners over 10K on the road, that I ended up stress fracturing tibia, and that's what nearly sort of torpedoed my Rome chances.
So that was 63 in the fall?
No, when I did this, I actually did the injury in the winter of late winter, early spring of 59. And so could I recover enough to be able to make the Olympic team for 1960? And then that was, then of course, that's sort of based on performances in February and March, mainly February, 1960. And then once having made the team, then there's all that period, March through to September, to actually really get stronger and do some more training and get better.
So you were injured in the winter build-up of 59, in the build-up of the 60 games.
Yep, I was on crutches.
For how long? 6?
Well, our orthopedic surgeon didn't know anything about this stuff, and I contacted a British doctor, and he said, get on it as soon as you can, with lots of rubber on grassy surfaces, get in the water, salt water, and that's what I did, and it healed pretty quickly, but it did curtail. I did this in September.
Okay.
September, October, November, but by December, no, that wasn't. That was another year, I guess. Yeah, no. So I was able to start my track training around about Christmas, December,
Wow.
for the track season for us, which peaks in February.
Yeah. So, how did that affect? I mean, I know, training is obviously inhibited in that way, right? I mean, you're basically not able to train. I don't know if there was cross-training abilities there that were super effective, but how did that affect your mentality in your approach, your psychological approach to the games?
Well, I doubled down with when I was properly healed 2 days. I went out to a beach house of my friend, my training partner, and we got up in the morning and ran 10 miles and then track trained in the afternoon.
Wow.
So it was that sort of regimen that during my Christmas vacation.
Mm-hmm.
So I was working 8:30 to 5 at the time, and so it was pretty hard to fit things in, and especially training for the Olympics during the winter.
Yeah.
Cold, rainy, asphalt roads. However, when we got over to this part of the world, it felt great. Northern Hemisphere.
Yeah.
No, but my expectations weren't that high, I don't think. I mean, based on what I had read about and so on, I thought, well, I may be able to make the Olympic final if they're based on 1956 results. Now, if someone said, well, you're going to have to break the Olympic record to make the final.
Yeah.
Then I mightn't have felt so good about it. So my objective actually going in was, I'm going to try and make the final. Now, Lydiard tells another story, but...
What does he do?
Well, he predicted that I would win, I think, something.
Yeah, I remember that. But where did that...
Well, now things changed rapidly, of course, over there. After the first round heats, I run a PR and it felt real easy. That feels pretty good. There was a 4-man race, three to qualify. So, and there was this Van Roosevelt, there was Ernie Cunliffe, me, and I think a German guy, Roosevelt, Cunliffe. Oh, Christian Wagley. Yeah, so the reason I ran a PR is because Christian Wagley was a compulsive front runner and he blasted out and I ran 1:48 something. And the commentators were saying this is an example of the ridiculousness of the situation. We know who the top 3 are going to be before we start, and I wasn't in the top 3 with most predictions. So Roosevelt actually got eliminated in that. Silver medalist in the, was he in the 1500 or 3rd place? Yeah. So and so sort of based on that, then the expectation level sort of adjusted.
Yeah. But you're still taking it one round at a time. I mean, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But you're not even thinking about the final at this point. I mean, that'd be...
Well, after that first round heat, I was thinking, yes, I've got a lot more. I can run faster.
Got a taste.
And I can even break the Olympic record, which is,
You thought that?
Yes.
At that time?
Well, it wasn't that good. It was 1:47.7, I think. And I'd sort of run an easy, very easy 1:48.3. So, it's there.
Yeah.
So the afternoon, that was the morning. So we had to run in the morning. That's a 1:48.3. Late in the afternoon, 1:48.5 same day, 1:47.7 the next day, and 1:46.3 in the final. And not everyone was feeling 100% in the final. And Ryan, you see that quite a bit in Olympic 800s, don't you? The times are not what you would expect from the talent that's there.
Yeah.
So you know, when the Olympics were in Beijing, you know, I would have placed or even won, I think, based on my PR.
Yeah.
So it's those heats that knock people out, and for an endurance trained 800 runner, it's not a problem.
It's to your benefit.
Yeah, actually, yes. Yeah, and so people like George Kerr, for example, just die in the stretch.
Mm.
Remember him?
I don't.
You don't?
No.
Oh, Jamaican 800 meter runner, very good over 400.
Oh, okay. 400, 800.
Yeah, 400, 800. Yeah, George Kerr.
And certainly has probably a
Deceased.
aerobic.
Deceased. Yeah.
This is, you know, you brought up something very interesting. I wanted to ask you about this. You were obviously one of the best, if not the best, in your time, and you mentioned the 2008 Olympics, and obviously, you know, your personal best world record on grass, 144.3,
Yes.
would still be competitive in any championship today.
Yes.
If you
Almost solo.
yeah, going out 51, right?
Yeah. And then stuck in the lead and
Hang on. And
hang on. Well, actually, after that 50 run, I ran my second fastest 200.
Did you really?
Yeah. Yeah, I was just so excited with, 51 doesn't feel too bad, and poured it on, and then
I want to get to
then had trouble with
it's
28 something for the last 200.
Yeah. You know, there's so much I want to ask about your sprint training and you know the mileage and everything. But before I get there, if you could compare, because I don't know, but it seems to me that the current world record is maybe at a point where the energy systems that are being utilized and being trained are different now than at, you know, the 144, 143 level. If you were knowing what you know now, but if you were in a situation where you were competing currently, would you change your training at all in your preparation to a championship?
Yeah, you know, I think it's still fairly simple. You know, like have you read Marty LaCour's book?
A little bit.
There's a piece in there where he says how easy it is to train for an Olympic gold medal. All you do is get out and do a great base training. You then do some race-related intervals, have some races, and that's it.
Simple. That's it. Gold.
Well, but when you think about it, you know, Lydiard had some pretty detailed training schedules.
Yes, I've read those.
And until I, you know, had a bit of experience, I thought that was what, you know, was really needed to be done. And now I know that not really.
Like what, for example?
Well, you know, he had a whole slew of different things, a 2 mile at 3/4 pace,
Right.
10 400s at some other pace, and so on. And I believe, like Marty does in a way, that you do the base, and the base allows you to do more of the race-related work without becoming overtrained, and you can recover faster from it as well, from such training. And that you are careful with overdoing the high-intensity training all the time, and making the workouts too demanding, so that you say minimizing rest periods to the point that you're not truly recovered before you're off again and churning it out. And I think, you know, that's understanding that you need a little bit of that, but not too much, and where that balance is between overtraining and optimal training or whatever
Mm-hmm.
is important, and that may come with experience. A lot of athletes screw up, in my opinion, because they associate hard training with results.
Mm.
But you've got to be careful. It's a two-edged sword. If too much hard training, and there's a physiological basis for this, which I've always found interesting, and that is the stress hormone cortisol goes up when you push yourself very hard. It goes up when you're in starvation. So it's the body's response to stress.
Mm.
This is where steroids come in. So if you take steroids, that
Right.
fixes the cortisol problem, but that's illegal. So.
Yeah.
So the way to do it instead is to do the distance running, which seems to protect you against that cortisol over response with stress.
So going.
So and I didn't really answer your question. Would I do anything different? Probably. I would not be such a slave to a schedule.
Just go on feel, or
Well, I mean, well, no. I would make sure I had enough. So in other words, I'd have probably not as much time on speed work. I think you can get that back fairly quickly. I'd do about 6 weeks before the major race. And a variety of intervals, high volume early on, faster and less volume as you're starting to reach peak.
Yeah.
And it would be so. My view is that you can do more race-related intervals and training when you're properly conditioned than you can otherwise, and then it's important to do that. It's not, in my opinion, important to develop a lot of very fast speed, because for an 800, I mean 51, if you can float at 51, you've got it made. You don't need to be running 46 or anything in training to. Although some would argue that if I really work hard and get myself so I can run 46, then 40, 50, 51 is going to be very easy, and that's partly true, I suppose. But I don't think it's worth the effort to do that. Rather the endurance, as Lydiard preached to me when he first talked me into this. He said, you can run a quarter in 55, Peter, can't you? Yeah. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to do two together? And I said, yeah, 150, that'd be fantastic. He said, all you do is need the endurance, and you can do that.
Do you believe that? I mean, now,
yeah, I believe that. I totally believe it now.
Yeah, it makes sense to me.
Yeah, it does. But a lot of sports scientists have been very disparaging about the value of distance work, because I suppose taught somewhere back in their past that about the concept of specificity, and they use terms like plodding along. Well, we didn't plod along.
Yeah.
We ran. I would like to say at least about 75% of VO2 max, which for me in those days would have been anything between 6 and 7 minutes a mile, 7.5 minutes a mile even.
For typical runs, let's just say during the base period.
That's correct.
Yeah, 22-mile long runs.
Yeah, and where you actually are, you're pushing it, but not pushing it too hard. Now, 8 minutes a mile, you can almost do that totally on fat burning if you've got a lot of slow twitch fibers over. We had a guy that could run 80 miles in a day at 8-minute mile pace with a few rests between, and Max Telford. But it did it almost on fat, and so the distance training actually enhances fat burning, which doesn't really help you at all as a half miler, I don't think.
You know, I've heard training philosophies, especially with the 800 now, that in order to go sub 145, you've got to do X amount of 150s under 17 seconds. You know, it's
150s.
150 meters under 17 seconds.
What does that translate to 200?
Well, it's maybe 20, just under 23 seconds, somewhere around there.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah.
I mean, that to me seems really fast.
Well,
in training.
It should, yeah, and that should be used sparingly.
Okay.
And maybe towards getting close to racing.
So maybe in let's just go back to your example. You know, like the 6 weeks leading up to a championship. Is that maybe in that time?
Yeah, 6 to 8 weeks.
6 to 8 weeks. And now I know something that was also from what I can read, but and gather, but was of utmost importance in your training paradigm was the usage of hills and hill trainings and hill circuits. And I believe that was maybe what led into the transition to the track, very specific speed work.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a wonderful training method, hill work, because you train. I mean, the two things that you're trying to improve are leg speed and power. And so running up the hills, now if you're running on the flat, you're limited by your aerobic capacity to run at a speed where you're developing these two components.
Yeah.
But with the uphill, you're de-emphasizing leg speed, focusing on thrust, drive, and vice versa. On the downhill, the thrust component, and so from the aerobic cost, you're not having to worry about any thrust contribution to the energy. When you're running downhill, all you have to worry about is leg speed and vice versa going up. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah.
Simple, elegant.
I love it.
And the only downside is that you risk stress fractures if you're doing this on hard surfaces.
And that's probably mostly coming from the downhill aspect.
Yeah.
But what were some specific examples of hill circuits and train? I mean, distance, was it percent in grade or?
There's a variety of hills actually. I had a couple of hill courses. One that I eventually used was quite close to my house. It was a pretty steep uphill, which was okay. And then there was a flat bit across the top, and then there was a more of a gentle, longer downhill, which I thought was sort of ideal. The way Arthur Lydiard proposed it originally in the course he introduced us all to, it had the uphill. It was about probably nearly a 2-mile circuit.
Okay.
Maybe a little less, with uphill. I'm not sure how long that would be, and then across the top, recovering after the which was maybe a quarter of a mile or so, and then the downhill was half a mile. I remember that because I was sort of breaking the world record each time.
So were you
running downhill?
Were you going that? I mean, was it a very up-tempo workout?
Yeah. You just let yourself go.
Yeah.
And got a lot of leg speed. And then across the bottom, you were supposed to do some intervals. Well, usually you're so shot from the downhill run that didn't do much of those. Arthur wasn't there anyway, so
Coach isn't there.
Well, this was the thing. You see, he was pretty busy working 2 jobs, and looking after having a family and so on. So the interaction with him was, in terms of getting to run with him and so on, would be on the weekends, and then if you went around to his house at night and needed a shot in the arm because training wasn't going so well.
He'd give it to you, huh?
Yeah. I mean, he was, as you know, I mean, he is so positive.
Yeah.
And so I think if I was to say what Arthur's contribution, his why he was so good as a coach, one is that he had the right training idea, the distance training, and he had read widely. He was impressed by a British coach, Army guy Webster, FAM Webster, who made a case for why endurance training would help middle distance runners, and Arthur thought it made a lot of sense. And then the guy is so positive. It's sort of everyone else are just sort of there. I mean, they're not. They just. You can just write them off. If you just hang in on this training, you used words like you get into a tireless state, and it sort of is true. A lot of this stuff ended up being true. I well remember the day when he said, Peter, when you get to the stage, you could run our Wairarua course. This is this 22-mile.
Yeah, the famous,
back to back, and then you'll be right for anything in the world. This is on successive days, and I actually did that one day. Ran 22 miles on Saturday, another 22 on Sunday, and
How many miles did you put in that week? I mean,
well, that was definitely 100.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when I first started off, my Wairarua time was about maybe 2:45 or so. Well, eventually I'd sort of flip around at 6-minute mile pace, to about 2:12. So, it's a heady feeling to be able to do that, especially when you've got a decent amount of basic speed as well. And that's what Arthur, I think, saw in me when he first. I showed up at a training session where Halberg and a couple of McGee and a couple of others of his runners were running, and they were doing 200s. Well, I sort of loved doing 200s, and I just sort of peeled off 24-second ones, and Murray and co were struggling with about 25, 26.
Yes. So, so that was obviously part of your natural ability, I would say, right?
Yeah. So without too much training, I could do quite well.
But don't you think? I mean, I just I guess in my mind, if I'm thinking 100 miles a week for a typical 800-meter runner, I mean, what do you do to maintain your leg turnover during that time, or is it just something?
You don't. You have to sacrifice that. That is what a lot of people see as the big problem with it. You don't maintain leg turnover, but you get it back. You can get it back. You have to have the confidence that you will get it back.
Yeah, which is tough.
Yeah, because the early races are not so good.
Yeah, right.
But so you said, would there be anything different that I would do? And it would be to weave in a session once a week, and I don't have any good rationale for it other than it's addressing this, maintaining a bit of leg turnover. So you do a session of intervals at a decent intervals.
I mean, repeat 200s or
anything really, 200, 400s. If you're doing middle of endurance stuff, 400s would be easier. 200s you could do it faster if that's what you wanted. I mean, I don't think it's magic.
Yeah.
I really don't. I think there are many ways to get to this the same result. So so what had happened to some of the New Zealand runners that he talked into doing this? They did the endurance base stuff, and then they didn't have a very good season after it because of what you had raised. And they said, oh, to heck with this, I'm just going to do my own training. And so then they did a massive amount of speed work, and they already had the base, and they ran some of their best stuff.
Yeah.
And say, oh God, thank God I wised up about this Lydiard stuff.
Yeah, they kind of forgot about all the work that.
And then the season after
Yeah,
that,
I was just gonna say.
they tanked again. So that's, yeah. I hope I've addressed some of what you asked.
No, absolutely you
Okay.
have. Yeah. I think, for me, it's understanding. I think, and I've heard Arthur Lydiard speak, and I've read some of his books, and so I get the principles behind his methodology. But I think for me, and for most of our viewers and listeners, the unique opportunity here is somebody who lived it and succeeded under it, and knowing that, especially in this day and age, there's a lot of instant gratification, and we want it now, and we want,
Yeah, that doesn't work.
Yes.
Although I was pretty lucky, I had results pretty quickly. What I like to say is that as a 17-year-old, I was third in my high school 880 and mile championships. I was the glory game in New Zealand is rugby, and so
Yeah.
that's what as a high achiever who wanted glory. That's what
Yeah.
that's what I played, and but I could do lots of other things. There was tennis and
You were a fantastic athlete. I mean, growing up.
all round. Yeah, well,
Yeah.
and I got exposed to a lot of things, and I did have good ball skill, but I could also run a bit. But when I got up against specifically trained runners, I couldn't cut it. And that's what happened to me in high school. And not just narrow defeats, fairly large, like 40 yards and 880 at least in a mile. So I concluded that it was a talent difference. And that was where it was wrong, because at 19, when I started training, and this is 19, this is not sort of earlier than that, things happen very quickly. And this is sort of annoys my wife, Mickey, because within a couple of years or so, I had this Olympic gold medal. Now, can I have a moment to explain the physiological basis of why distance running works?
Please.
Because this is a title of a talk I often give. We used to often give. I don't get invited so much now. How slow running makes you fast. But it's not that slow. It's 75% VO2 max or thereabouts, which would translate to, for most people, 7.5 minutes a mile. Most good runners. Throw an occasional faster one. Maybe do a 10 miler in 60 or something like that.
Yeah.
So what you're trying to do is train the fast twitch muscle fibers that are called into play to run at 800 meter speed. And so how do you do that? You can't just run 143 800s.
Right.
You do repeats, shorter distance. So that allows you to recruit those muscles that produce the energy for that pace, but over a shorter distance.
Yes.
And repeated. And so that is extremely appealing for the interval training idea. But the downside is the high intensity,
Can't sustain it.
and potential overtraining
Risk of injury
problems
and things
and
like
risk of injury and so on. But there is another way of getting to these. So let me back up a little. When you start exercising, we both have slow twitch and fast twitch fibers, different percentages depending on our genetics. And so at the onset of exercise, moderate exercise, slow fibers, slow contracting fibers, these are recruited first, activated first. These are fibers in the postural muscles, for example, and they are these red fibers, high glycogen content, high mitochondrial content, and so on. And then as the pace increases, as the percentage of VO2 max that you're working at increases, then you have to get into other fibers, including, and there are two types of fast twitch, A and B. So the fast twitch A are those which have they're better adapted for endurance. B, not so much. So how do you get to that population of fibers? It turns out that if you do long distance runs at a moderate pace, you deplete the glycogen after, say, an hour of running. The glycogen depletion happens in these muscle fibers that are sort of being used to run at 75% of VO2 max. And when that happens, they can't contract anymore. And they drop out and other fibers take over the work. And this is why, if you just do an hour, you're not getting there. But if you do longer, say up to 2 hours, then through the process of glycogen depletion of the early contracting fibers, you get into those that normally wouldn't be activated. Fast twitch B fibers, A and B actually. B to A conversion is what you're looking for, whether you can get those fast twitch can become more like A, more mitochondria, better capillary density around them, higher, well, they've all got high glycogen levels, that's for sure, and just better adapted for endurance. So, and the evidence for that is actually from my PhD mentor, who actually in Sweden did a study where they actually took serial biopsies from the lateral vastus muscle during exercise at 70 to 75% VO2 max on a bicycle, and then looked at patterns of glycogen depletion. And early on, and so they took biopsies, teased out fast twitch, slow twitch muscle fibers, stained for glycogen, nothing in the first half hour, no glycogen depletion in the fast twitch, and they started to happen as you got to an hour, and as you got longer, more, suggesting that they were being used.
Yeah.
So when I saw that, I thought, that's it. That's why it works. And running at 75% VO2 max for an hour and a half to 2 hours does not chew up your body like a whole bunch of stressful intervals.
Yeah, I mean, you can come back, but I was just going to ask, at what frequency can you do? I mean, I know, the power of the long run, and it was kind of on this 7-week cycle, but you mentioned you did it back to back, Saturday, Sunday one time. I mean,
yeah, that was just a one-time thing.
Yeah. But I mean, in terms of frequency that we're, and
what do you mean frequency though? If you're trying to do 100, let's say in my case, sometimes it was 70, sometimes 80. Yeah. And you, at one time I said, I'll just divide 100 by 7, 15, and I'll do 15s. It didn't work. I sort of, I either got injured or did psychologically, it was no good. Yeah. But being able to alternate, say, the way Lydiard had it set up, Monday was a 12-mile sort of fartlek type run, Tuesday a 15, 10 on, or 12 on Wednesday, 15 to 18 on Thursday, 10 on Friday, Saturday you might do cross-country races, and Sunday 22. That was kind of a typical week.
And now knowing what you know now, I mean, that would you'd agree with that.
Yeah, I'd agree. Yeah, I totally agree with that.
I
think that's good.
Yeah,
yeah. And the pace, maybe you might run your 10-miler a little faster, but the others, keeping it enjoyable and chatting and running with someone.
Yes, yeah. And I know that so much of where we're at now, especially in the U.S., is everything's paved, and it's just a flat trail going everywhere, and it's hard to find these nice little meandering trails and things.
Yeah, although I must admit I didn't do much trail running. I hated sand running. That's the worst thing, even though Elliot seemed to love it. And the thing is that those were the days when I was pretty poor and earning next to nothing because I was sort of apprenticed to a estimating firm who were teaching me the trade, and I was being taught for 5 years and still on a pittance. And by that time I was a world record holder and Olympic champion. But so what I'm getting at is that in order to fit in 8:30 to 5 job with training, you just pretty much had to have your courses start from outside your back door. You didn't have time to
run to work
or the transportation, to be frank, to go to a nice spot to work out. You just ran out the back door when you got home from work. And actually I got to the stage of running into work and showering in the caretaker's shower. I don't know how I've talked him into that. I told him I was training for the Olympics, I think is what.
Sure, you could just
yeah, so what I did was take a bus into work, which is about a 5-mile bus ride, into work with my clothes for the week on Monday. And then Monday evening, when I finished work at 5, changed out the back door and started my training. And then I ran in the morning, which was 4 miles actually, if you're a bit shorter than the bus route. Showered in the caretaker's shower and changed into the day's clothes, and that was it. And then on Friday took them all home on the bus. So I think, it's this reminds me of when the computer was developed, didn't Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak sort of do it in a garage somewhere, and someone at IBM said we need to simulate that for our guys.
I see. Yeah.
But anyway, if you have to sort of, if you don't get it all handed to you, I think that's important, and that's why I think the kids today who if they don't have a shoot contract, they can't possibly be successful. That's bullshit.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, good. yeah. So it's possible.
Absolutely. I was gonna go back to something that you alluded on, and I had a trail off there.
I interrupted you, I know.
No, okay, no. So this is where we were going. I think it was what you're saying is very intrinsic. The motivation. It was very much within you, deep within you, and that's what you just did what you had to do to train and prepare yourself. But I do want to ask, the difference, as motivated as we all can be, but the difference between, let's say, your first medal and the preparation to Tokyo, which would be your second Olympics, was the pressure or the buildup, and just from a confidence level or a psychological level, any different? Because it seems like maybe the first one, you're happy to be there, and like you said,
I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
And just making the final would have been a success.
Right.
Well, the second time round,
there were expectations, I'm sure.
High. Yeah, it had to be gold.
Yeah.
And not only one gold, maybe 2 golds. So but on the other hand, I held the world records, and I knew what I could do if the training went well.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of confidence.
It's funny because I could see that aiding and building your confidence, but I could also see that in a way, it could put more pressure on yourself, because here you are the world record holder, you are the reigning gold medalist, and you've got all these, expectations on yourself leading up, and this is what you're supposed to do.
Yes. Yeah. So I suppose it did. Maybe I was just too naive still to sort of recognise it as such. And all I thought about was, if I do the training, and the training works well, it'll take care of things. And I just have to keep healthy. That's not easy to do, actually. Keep healthy.
Yeah.
And so there's always injury problems, illnesses. Hellberg, I think, got the flu in Tokyo, and just couldn't perform at all.
I mean, everything has to go right.
Yeah, it does. It does.
And you've got a whole year of training, or a whole, macro cycle, or however you look at it, of training. And I would think, at that time, again, with all the success that you've had, the hardest thing to do would be to hold back and not do more, or not, try and do too much, or add too much volume, or,
Yeah, well, I had made mistakes in the past, and I learned from that. Was overdoing it, and not having, not being careful and gradual about progressions.
Yeah.
In training, and wanting to get out and race and prove it to myself that I could do it. As I matured, I didn't need to do that.
Yeah.
I better get into a race here just to see if I can still do it. Or
yeah. So and obviously we can build ourselves up that way, right? If we get in a fast race and there's check the box, I ran fast, I'm in good shape. But when it comes down to championships, it's not about time, is it? I mean,
not necessarily. Yeah. Right.
Was Arthur Lydiard there also? I mean, was he pretty constant in that build-up, or is it?
Well, did you read his last book?
I did not.
Don't.
I think I know where you're going with this.
Oh, you do?
I don't know. I think I haven't read his entire book, but I think I know.
Well, Garth was the author, and Garth knew what the story was, and the friendship between Garth Gilmore, myself, and Murray Hellberg and Garth Gilmore was sort of tarnished by that, what Garth let slip through in the book. Well, basically what Arthur and I would sort of had a bit of a falling out because, and he can't defend himself, but I'm going. I think he felt I wasn't grateful enough to what he did for me. That's the feeling I had. In fact, he told me that once. He said, "Peter, you don't think you owe me anything, do you? But you owe me a hell of a lot." And I'm sorry that that he felt that way, because I wouldn't have been able to do it without him sort of recognising the talent that I had, because I certainly didn't. I thought, based on high school stuff, that I didn't have the talent. But he saw something in me, and unlike the typical New Zealand characteristic is to put people down. Now, Arthur was not like that. Arthur was the opposite of that. He actually built you up. Yeah. But we did have some problems, because there were other people who didn't like Arthur. Arthur rubbed a lot of people up the wrong way, especially administrators and who he had no time for.
Yeah. I mean, I can think of so many coaches that do the same,
Yeah, right. And something he, like, I don't know if you've ever heard him sort of talk about shoes and slam people about not knowing what they're doing about shoes, and that was his expertise. But anyway, he did rub a lot of people up the long way, and they tended to get back and sort of put out the story that Arthur was riding on my glory. and that really I'd have been able to be successful with anyone. That sort of idea, and Arthur was sort of hearing this sort of stuff, and I think I just didn't do enough to sort of reassure him. Otherwise, so we had a bit of a falling out, and one of the things is I didn't really like the pressure that Arthur put on me by predicting what I was going to do. Very much said, well, Peter's going to, I used to try and keep expectations low, because when you do that, your risk of failure is not as much as if your expectations are too high,
right,
and you don't meet them. And so the first time I ran under 4 minutes, I was thinking, I could possibly run maybe 3:57. Arthur said, Peter's going to run 3:55. he blasted that out, and so a record crowd showed up. and of course, Peter fulfills his prediction.
Yes, and then some, right?
So Arthur's a genius. But anyway, we had this falling out in a couple of times, but 64, and so I was training myself basically, and then somehow someone intervened and patched it up, and so I showed Arthur what I was doing, and in his book he says Peter wouldn't even got through the first round if he had kept that up. Well, that's just a load of bullshit.
Yeah. I mean, and that's what,
so that's what that was about, and so thereafter I followed pretty much his plan.
what time of the season was that about?
This is winter time for us.
Okay. So just
say,
months before? Just a couple months?
Yeah, like May, June, or no, may even been later than that. July, August, September. That's
of 64?
64, yeah.
I mean, how much can you change in the...
Well, that's when the fine tuning of the you've done all the base. There's nothing complicated about doing base training.
Yeah.
But Arthur felt that there was sort of a nuance to be done on the amount of and volume and intensity of speed work that you layered on your base training to bring you to peak form for a race.
Yeah.
That's what he emphasised. But what sort of was annoying, this is nothing, as a coach you probably don't enjoy hearing this, but Arthur and I worked for the same outfit, a tobacco company, and so we shared the same stage together talking. And he talked about coaching and other things. And he always used to say, I don't treat a runner like a racehorse. I try and get them to understand what they're doing so that they can think for themselves. Heard that many times. And yet when Peter starts thinking for himself, it's unacceptable.
Gotcha. Yeah.
He's screwed up. This wouldn't have worked.
He
needs me.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you remember, specifically what was so off in your kind of training, what you had laid out for your training that was adjusted, that he had come in and adjusted?
I essentially, I don't remember in detail.
Yeah.
But I don't think it could have been that much difference, because I subscribe to the Medalist theory. I think as long as you do race-related work in a gradual manner, and without overdoing it, and get in some races, and that's all you really need. And the important thing, I had favourite type workouts. Like I liked early on, I liked doing lots of 400s and say 65, say 20 and 65.
Okay.
With a 400 jog in between. So that's actually like 44. That's a 10-mile run, right?
Yeah.
Right there, 4400s.
So when you say early on, you mean in the initial 6 to 8
Yeah,
weeks?
and the transition from
yeah.
this long, slow build-up work to getting into developing speed endurance.
So after the hill circuits. So
Gradual transition into early emphasis on volume,
Yeah.
and then gradually more emphasis on less volume and more speed. But mixing it up, and in fact, sometimes I would go and work out with sprinters just to do something easy.
I wonder what our viewers will think of that. Work out the sprinters, do something
They don't know.
easy.
They don't know what training's like. A lot of resting and sitting around and stretching.
Full recovery.
Yeah, right. And so sometimes you need that.
Yeah. But back to and I know we're long on time here, but going
We
in.
were late.
Yeah, no, no, you're fine. Going into the 64 games, do you still take it one round at a time, just like you did in 60? Let's just.
Yeah, well, you really have to. The way it was in Tokyo, the 800s first. So, and I was a little uncertain whether or not I was capable of running a decent 800. But I had a time trial. I got Tommy O'Hara to come into it with. Lydiard was advising him in some sort of small capacity, and I think Lydiard talked O'Hara into running this 800 with me, saying it'd be good for him. And in fact, I ran a 147 something in essentially a time trial, and it just sort of blew Tommy out of the water. So then I knew that I was okay. I was ready.
Yeah.
And so it just became a question of there was the heats. Was there heats, or was it? I think there was only three races.
Okay.
There must have been heats, semi-final, and final. But then the next day, the fourth day, was 1500 heats. So fortunately, there was 5 to qualify, and I was able to get away with something like. I still don't understand that 1500 meters, but roughly about a 4 or 5 mile, I think it was, to qualify. And then we had a day's rest. I did an hour's jog on that day, and you see, when you're in good shape, you can do these things: a day's rest and an hour's jog.
Yeah, I was just going to ask.
Yes, an hour's easy jog, and then we had the semi-final, and I really felt fresh and ran 3:38.8, which was sort of really cruising just to win that heat. And then another day's rest, and then the final. And I'm the fastest 800-meter runner in the field, and everyone runs as though it was the opposite of that. So they all jogged around, not wanting to lead, and we ran slowly, and I'm thinking, oh heck, So that allowed me to run the last quarter in 52 something, which again blew the field out of the water.
I mean, even today, 52, you would be in medal contention.
Yeah, right. And this is not on a rubberized track. This is on a thing that you kicked up, sort of clay in someone's face when you accelerated.
That's part of your strategy.
Well, that's what John Davies sort of said happened.
I wanted to ask you, and I know you can comment on it or not, but do you think? Obviously, performance-enhancing drugs are very prevalent in our sport.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea, in your own mind, in your own opinion, if there are clean records, dirty records, if so, what might be?
Yeah, I mean,
world record, if we're talking.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, How about, should we mention names? Or?
No, we don't have to get into it, but I was just curious.
Well, I mean, so some of these sprint records
Right.
in the era of steroids,
Yeah.
I feel they weren't real.
Yeah. Outliers, like, I mean.
Yes. Some of them may still be standing.
Yeah.
So there's that. There's the steroid thing, and then of course there's the transfusion stuff, and then even better the EPO thing, blood boosting. But steroids still. I remember Dick Quack asking me. He said, you know, do you think anabolic steroids would help make your heart stronger? You know, everyone knew that weightlifters, throwers took them, and I said, well, I don't know. But it turned out that that steroids were very helpful in helping you prevent overtraining.
Right. Because you can just recover. Right?
Yeah, you recover quickly.
Yeah.
And I think what happens is that they bind to the same receptor that cortisol does and block the cortisol effect. So, and all this seemed to start, in the 1970s or so. And from my mind, you don't know who was doing it or who wasn't. I mean, look how successful Lance was in totally concealing it in spite of.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's those around who have done that. The Russians are obviously not very good at it. That is, stealing and concealing it.
Yeah.
So it's too bad in a way, Ryan. I don't know. I did go through a phase of thinking that, as far as the EPO thing was concerned, that just sort of not waste all this money on trying to find out who's cheating and who's not, and just let everyone dope up to a certain hematocrit level, which is safe, and with a simple finger prick you could sort of assess that. And if you're over, more sophisticated, detailed test, and if you're still over, you're out. Now, people who object to that say, well, it's possible to have a natural hemoglobin level that's high if you're altitude trained or dehydrated or whatever, and so there are all sorts of objections to that idea. But I must admit, thinking that, if people want to dope, then let everyone do it and make it an even playing field, but that's never going to happen.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's, for me personally, that's what's so troubling, is that it's not an even playing field, right?
No, it's not. No. And I think, Ryan, just sort of on that topic, why a lot of people feel in the 60s was a pure era, that the performances were honest and not tainted by... But golly, I don't know that people care that much whether or not someone's doping. Do you think it's sort of, I could think of another example in the political realm, which I will not mention, as to people not caring too much about the incompetence.
Yeah, yeah.
But I don't know if people care that much. Although Lance did get a big backlash, that's for sure, and that sort of surprised me in a way. Although Lance goes down to New Zealand and gets people who are just clamouring to ride with him, it's sort of,
yeah,
it's hard to understand.
It really is. And in American sports too, it's in baseball, it's in football, it's a lot of, and it seems like when they just come out and apologize, it's all forgiven.
Yeah, there's too much sort of worshipfulness going on.
Yeah.
I've never been a very good worshipper.
Yeah.
And
idolizing
someone else.
Yeah.
including a deity by the head. I never understood that either. Sorry.
This is safe place.
Yeah, there just seems to be an inherent desire of people to worship something.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've appreciated people saying that they've enjoyed watching me run, and particularly like people who I've inspired through. But sometimes you wonder if it's worth it. But this is why. If I was in charge of sort of Olympic champions, so sort of a Bela Karolyi type thing, I would look for people who had a very intense desire for recognition. And there are psychological tests that you can do to figure that out. And I did a little bit of psychology in some of my degree work, and I thought, well, psychologists probably have more to offer than physiologists, because physiologists come along afterwards and say, well, you're successful because of this, this, and this.
Right.
They rarely come up with anything innovative.
It's after the fact.
It's after the fact. Maybe the glycogen depletion stuff they did, but I think if you can identify people who will move heaven and earth to get recognition, and this is what it is. I don't think people would do this if it wasn't for the publicity. You wouldn't do it on an island. You have to have TV, or you have to.
Yeah.
And some people crave that. I think I did. I'm happy to admit it.
Yeah.
And so in spite of loving tennis and board games much better than the boring sport of sorry.
Well, you were good at it.
Than running, yeah. And so I was better at running, and all this other stuff went by the board in order to maximize my running.
That makes complete sense to me.
It does?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
I think I'm the same way. And speaking of, this want and maybe need for appreciation, I understand now you've moved on to other
But
tennis.
I mean, I just have fun with it. Now, Mickey, my wife, is extremely competitive, and I can see why she likes winning.
Hates to lose.
Yeah. Whereas I'm happy with it. I mean, I don't need to win. It's sort of nice. We both when you say, well, what is life all about? What floats your boat? And for both of us, and I think this is a good thing that we're married, is that we both like competitive activities, and not only the competition itself, but also the friends that you make during these sort of competitions, and the important part of it, I think, is the preparation to get yourself better, so that you'll compete better. I think that's the important part, than the actual competition itself. Actually, the training and the preparation and the dedication and the reorganizing your life to make a better performance possible. Now, and so we play in lots of senior games, and it's kind of fun getting older, because you get into an easier age group, and then as far as table tennis is concerned, which is a very complicated game, surprisingly, because I had a good racket background, and table tennis is more complex and there's more to it than any of the racket sports I've played, because of all the spins that can be done, and not only being able to impart spin, but recognize your opponent's spin. And so it takes years to actually become competent. And I've only been playing 6 years, my opposition has been playing 40 years, most of them. So they're having, so there's two things going on. There's the training improvement and the age-related decline. Well, they're not getting any better from training because they've been doing it 40 years.
They've reached their max. Their ceilings.
Yeah, right. So they're declining with age, whereas I'm declining with age, but my improvement skill-wise is offsetting it. So as time goes on, I'll beat these guys.
Yes, I love it.
Yeah, Mickey doesn't buy that, but
Well, I think on that note, and I know you're in town, I believe, for a tournament. Is that correct? For
we're playing in the Texas Senior Games in San Antonio.
Oh, in San Antonio. Okay.
Yes.
Fantastic. Well, we'll bring the camera crew down and we'll film you. No, I'm just kidding. No, but I do thank you for your time. I really do. I appreciate you coming in, and I know you're on your way down there, but it certainly was a bit of a detour, I know.
Yeah, no, I think Mickey is still awake.
Yeah.
Probably listening into all that stuff.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate
Hey, Ryan.
it. Thank you.